On out to the economy, 53.6%. That's where we are now in terms of the inflation figures for last month. Well, it appears to be better when we picked somewhere around 54.1%, raising fears that Ghana's economy may spiral out of control. But now there are indications that it's just not the inflation figures, but also the performance of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar. It's up by some 5%. And it's raising hopes of many that we may get better. But first, let's listen to the government statistician, Professor Samuel Enim, announce the latest inflation figures.
Consumer Price Index for the month of February 2023 stood at 168.7 for the month of February 2023. This compares with the Consumer Price Index of 110.4 for the month of February 2022. Given these two price indices for the month of February 2023 and February 2022, inflation for the month of February 2023 stood at 52.8%. This indicates that prices of goods and services on the average between February 2022 and February 2023 have gone up by 52.8%. That is, prices of goods and services over a one-year period, specifically February 2022 and February 2023, went up by 52.8%. We have sustained the reversal that we started in last month with the upward increase in inflation. It will be recalled that in January 2023, we had a reversal of the upward trend from 54.1% in the month of December 2022 to 53.6% for the month of January 2023. So we have sustained the reversal in the upward trend in inflation rate that we recorded greater part of 2021 and 2022. The difference on a year-on-year basis between January 2023 and February 2023 indicates that prices of goods and services went down by 0.8 percentage points between January 2023 and February 2023. On a month-on-month basis, contrary to the sustained reversal, we saw Consumer Price Index on a month-on-month basis inching up by 0.2 percentage point, as the 1.7% that was recorded in January 2023 went up by 0.2 percentage point for the month of February 2023, increasing to 1.9% for the month of February 2023.
Well, so what's driving this, and why are we experiencing that downward trend? Isaac of VHA's data analyst here at JoyNews is joining us now. Isaac, good news. Obviously, we buy a lot, so I'm very positive about the figures as well. But let's get into the details as to what's driving the figures down.
So usually we look at least three indicators. The first one is the exchange rate situation of the country. And then also we look at, some other factors like, the price of fuel. Right. So if you look at exchange rates, for instance, we are not seeing the kind of depreciation we saw last year. If you compare last year, this same period to this year, comparing last year and this year, the cedi has been doing relatively well, although it's been fluctuating, but it's been at the 12 cedi mark for a very long time. Unlike last year, where it used to fluctuate between, some discrete points. So you can see the cedi moving from 7 cedis, then boom to 8 cedis. But this time around, it gains and then it also loses. But generally, it's been good. And for fuel prices, for instance, we've seen both petrol and diesel also are going up. We are expecting some additional 3 to 5% a reduction in the price of fuel. So this year, for instance, we've seen about 4 consecutive, drop in price of fuel. The first one was 5%. We saw an additional 8%, another 5%. We are expecting another 5%. So cumulatively, we are hovering around 30% since the beginning.
At the time we picked, with the figures ranging around 54.1%, all hopes were lost.
All hopes were lost, but we knew that there's going to be a point where we're going to come down. But my fear is that usually if you have such a peak and you are about to turn into a very good curve, we see the curve plateauing. But this time around, we see a very sharp decline. If you see it on the screen.
What's on the screen, sorry?
Yeah. So there's a sharp decline. I was expecting that the curve will bend and we see it plateauing before we see such a sharp decline. If you compare the decline we are seeing on the screen right now to what we saw exactly the same period last year,
it's not
exactly. There was the sharp decline last year as well, but we are hoping that the the indicators panning out currently is not the same as we saw last year. So last year we saw crude oil prices going up. This year, for instance, crude oil prices are coming down. The cedi wasn't doing relatively well. This year it is doing well. So we are hoping that this different, nature of the difference in the indicators we are seeing will actually see inflation coming down. We are anticipating that we'll see more declines, coming up.
And last year, a couple of months ago, the Statistical Service stoked a lot of controversy when they told us that lingeries and panties were among some of the items that had the highest cost on the market. Is that trend beginning to change?
Well, that trend, if you look at the top 20, items leading the inflation, we've seen some different change actually. So if you categorize them between food inflation and non-food inflation, now we have, inflation for non-food items actually reducing. It's less than the average figure, the headline inflation figure. The headline is 52.8. But we see non-food inflation being around 47%. So generally, it's been good for non-food items like what we were talking about, lingerie and, women underwear. But food inflation is still a little, some small percentage points above the average figure. But one interesting thing is that if you look at the regional breakdown, the only region standing out right now in terms of the inflation rate is the Volta region. It's the only
and what's
region,
accounting for that?
I may not be privy to the details, but we know that the Volta region is currently the only region with inflation rates below 40%. It's around 37 or 33%. All other regions are having rates some above the headline figure. So Greater Accra, for instance, still has inflation rates of more than 50%, more than 60% in some areas, although the headline figure is now 52.8%. But the Volta region is currently now the only island. It's more or less like the island when you do the regional breakdown.
Okay, I feel like going back home, but not now. Let's talk about the issue about transport, because that's a regulated sector. So although prices are coming down, it may take some time for it to reflect.
It may. If you look at GPRT, for instance, they're saying, although we've seen fuel prices going down, they want it to go down to a certain level before they apply any reduction or any reduction in price. We saw the same thing last year when at the dying embers of the year, we saw the cedi gaining so much strength. The GPRT came in that they were expecting that fuel prices would drop from the 23 cedis, the 18 cedis point away to 10 cedis before they come in to do a reduction. So when we saw the significant reduction, we saw GPRT coming in to reduce fuel prices, transport fares. So we are anticipating that if we kind of look at the trend, the trajectory of fuel prices right now, we've seen about 4 consecutive reduction in the price. If we are at the point where GPRT feels that they are at equilibrium and they feel that they can reduce the price, we may also see the reduction in fuel prices translating into reduction in transport fares, and we all will benefit from it if it happens.
So what's the outlook now?
Well, the outlook, we are still looking at the figure, but if we look at our repository and the calculations we've done, we are anticipating or forecasting that inflation will still come down to maybe 50% for the month of March. But it's still not clear yet because, just like I was saying, we wanted to see inflation plateauing. But this time around, we are not seeing that sort of plateauing. We are not too sure because the same thing that is happening now happened March last year or February last year. So we are probably anticipating that it could be a replicate of what happened last year. But the indicators are changing. And so that gives us some form of hope that inflation will be good. The outlook will be good. Maybe we're looking at somewhere 50% for the month of March, coming forward.
Isaac Ajay, data analyst here at JoyNews. The Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, is out since the latest figures have been released. He's been concerned about the fuel prices. He is of the view that the prices will go down further in the coming days.
I've been told that next week, we are likely to see fuel prices fall again as a result of this policy. Next week is not actually Professor has just said it's not that far, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow we will see the decline in prices that we are expecting. I mean, this is remarkable. 2.5 months ago, you were at 23 cedis per liter. Today, you are at 12 cedis and falling. That is a good point. But let me point out that the most important aspect of the gold for oil policy is not just the reduction in fuel price, but the most important aspect is the savings in foreign exchange that the Bank of Ghana will make as a result of the lower demand for forex to import oil. That saving is huge. We are currently importing about 50 to 60% of oil imports under this policy. The goal is to move to 100%, and that will be done this year. We will see this done with, and we'll work with the BDCs to make this happen. But the savings in foreign exchange, when we do this, will be an annual saving of around $4.8 billion US dollars every year when we get this done. And that means that the oil